Strange lights hanging through the pines, dead air humming late at night. Back road witnesses still shake at what vanished from their sight. Missing pages, sealed recordings, names they will not dare release. Something buried in this country still refuses rest in peace. No signal clean, no story whole. Something's moving down below. Access denied, 403 forbidden. The truth still gets in. Welcome to Paranormal America. Access denied, 403 forbidden. This is where the dark begins. Paranormal America. Ghost lights burning past the fence, black sedans and missing time. Voices bleeding through the static, warnings buried in the rhyme. Every town has one old story. Everybody knows and hides. Something happened, something stayed there, something still survives. Redacted lines, a vanished name. Nothing buried stays that way. Access denied, 403 forbidden. But the truth still gets in. Welcome to Paranormal America. Access denied, 403 forbidden. This is where the dark begins. Paranormal America. Cold file, black tape, lost hour, wrong date, dead signal, no key. Still something's getting through to me. Access denied, 403 forbidden. The truth still gets in. Welcome to Paranormal America. Access denied, 403 forbidden. This is where the dark begins. Paranormal America.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for being here tonight. Welcome to Access Denied, 403 Forbidden. Now, if you've seen the show before, here we explore the anomalous, the unhinged, the fringe, the cringe, the UFOs, the cryptids, the abhorred, the ignored, the restored, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the curious, the quantum, the lore, the lies, the legends, the chimera, the unquantifiable, the untaxonomicable, the forbidden, the locked government dossiers, the prohibited archives, the unbidden, the dark, the echoing caverns, the abnormal, the paranormal, the unsound, the subterfuge, the cabals, the conspiracies, and all the wet, slimy things that refuse to fit in your closet, that leak from your dresser, or breathe under your bed at night. By the way, folks, it is the 9th of July, the year of our Lord 2026, and tonight's guest is Dan Toth from the Bigfoot Investigative Group. Let's put Dan up right now. Dan, welcome to you, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. That's for sure. I'm glad, more than glad to be back on the show. Thanks.
We almost didn't have a show, thanks to the people that are in chat, by the way. I see a couple that are there. The strangeness of it all is my computer screwed up, the internet screwed up, that I have a show is rather amazing. And for whatever reason, I'm looking over here and it doesn't seem to be working on StreamYard. I'm only crossing my fingers that it's working on X and perhaps it's working on YouTube. And YouTube right now is in a horizontal format because I just wasn't interested in the trolls tonight. Now, let me start with this. For those people who haven't seen Dan before, he's a creator, if I'm not mistaken, the sole creator of the Bigfoot Investigative Group. And if you want to find his site, all you need, O2AMT in chat says, sound is good and video is good. Thanks, sir. Thanks for being a friend. Thanks for being a pal. Appreciate it. Anyway, you can go to BigfootInvestigativeGroup.com, and this is what you'll see. A lot of stuff right here. Home, staff, time, media, contact, all sorts of stuff up there. It's rather lengthy. Happy U.S. anniversary, 250th anniversary. Lots of stuff in here to see. Tons of information. So go to Bigfoot Investigative Group if you want to find out more about Dan Toth and about the group itself. By the way, can people subscribe to you, or can they help you along, or can they become members? Is that a possible thing?
Yeah, we haven't branched out to that yet, but we have been thinking about doing that in the future, but we haven't done it as yet.
Okay. And here's the staff. Dan Toth. Now, if you'll notice, there's kind of a linkage going on here. Dan Toth, USN SEAL, retired. Mike McMahon, United States Navy SEAL, veteran. Scott Wolf, United States Navy SEAL. Folks, are you seeing the trend? William Hill, SEAL. Patrick Howard, USMC, retired. Rick Beard, IT tech support. And Steve Brown, Army veteran. So it's a veteran-run group, and you really ought to go just to look and see what's happening to the Bigfoot Investigative Group. Now, I've had Dan on before, and when he was here, he spoke about a lot of the various adventures that he went on and a lot of the results that he's found. And he's seen, oh, by the way, I forgot one thing. I don't know if you're active here anymore. You're not necessarily on social media, but I did find you on Facebook. I don't know if you still update Facebook, but you can get some information there. And also, in the process of this is interesting. I have to put this up. In the process of looking for Dan Toth, I went around to the internet and I put Dan Toth, USN. And hey, Dan, did you know you had kind of maybe sort of a doppelganger out there? Ensign Dan Toth from Middletown, New Jersey, looks through a telescopic alidade while standing watch on the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer USS John McCain. So there's another Dan Toth out there, which I found kind of interesting, if for no other reason than that. And also, Dan Toth has been on a bunch of other podcasts, not just mine. Here's Dan on, by the way, all this information will be on Rumble, the Rumble side of the show, if Rumble deigns to comport with me and it's running. I'm looking over here and I'm not even seeing it running. So maybe yes, maybe no. I might be able to update some of the information there. But Dan was on Sasquatch Watch Radio. So Dan is a veteran. He's been on tons of places to talk about what it is that he does. And Dan and I share some interests in common. Now, last year, a friend of ours, a good friend, Dan knew him a lot more than I did. By the way, I first met Dan at the Bigfoot Investigative Group conference last year in Broomfield, Colorado. And this was Dan. What a great guy, as you can see. And then I also met this individual at the big conference last year, and that's Dr. Jeff Meldrum. And after that, probably 4, maybe 5 months later, I think it was September 11th of last year, Dr. Meldrum passed away from a brain tumor. And that is a massive, his passing is a massive, massive loss to anthropology and also to the Bigfoot encrypted community. He passed away at age 67 very suddenly. I knew 2 people, for example, that had brain cancer, and they likewise passed very rapidly. And he he worked for Idaho State University, and he was a professor there. He was a professor in anthropology. We spoke at length. He was very, very, very giving of his time. One of the nicest men that you could ever hope to see. He's still up on Idaho State University. You can still find him. You can see he's a professor of anatomy and anthropology, and that's what makes his research into Bigfoot, Sasquatch very, very interesting, because he came at it not necessarily from I'm interested in this, but he came at this from an anthropological view and a view of anatomy. And for example, if you ever went to any one of his presentations, and last year we were very, very blessed to have him talk at the Bigfoot Investigative Group conference. He spoke for probably 2.5 hours about the Patterson-Gimlin film in 1967. And after watching his presentation, you would be absolutely convinced that this was real. Sadly, there are still some people that don't believe in the Patterson-Gimlin film. I don't think it was the ability to fake that from a couple of guys that were farmers and ranchers. I don't think that ability was yet possessed at that time. Now and I'm going to ask you also about this, Dan Toth. I was first mostly convinced about this when I saw this show by a guy named Todd Standing. Now, there are people who talk about Todd. He's not the end all and be all of all of this stuff, but he happened to craft a movie called Discovering Bigfoot that convinced me. And then not too long after that, subsequently, on Highway 20 in California, coming back from the ocean, I saw what I thought was a juvenile Bigfoot or Sasquatch. So let's go back then. Dan Toth, you were a United States Navy SEAL for a number of years. If you would, for the people that have not seen or heard of you before, go into, if you would, a little bit of your background first about how you came to be a SEAL, how you came to go into the Navy, and then post-retirement, you became very interested and created B.I.G, the Bigfoot Investigative Group. So give us a little background, if you would, into your military and why I think that's critically important for what it is that you're doing now. And of course, we'll get into all of what you've been doing most recently. Dan Toth.
Yeah. To answer your question, and thanks for having me on again, and thanks for everybody being out there. I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I was a paper boy as a teenager down by the Bay Bridge Tunnel in an area called Chicks Beach. Bayville Park, Shore Drive area. And I met SEALs on my paper route when I was a boy. And they kind of took me under their wing and really inspired me. And they actually taught me how to swim, work out, and get ready for SEAL training, and I did it. And I went in the Navy. I enlisted in January '74. Then I went on active duty the following June after I graduated from high school in Virginia Beach at Cox High School. So I made it through Bud's class 92 in June. We graduated June 9th of 1977, went to Underwater Demolition Team 12, and then I subsequently went to swimmer delivery vehicles. Then I got out for a few years, stayed in the reserves, went back on active duty and served at SEAL Team 3. Then I was an advanced training course manager at Bud's. Then I went to SEAL Team 1, and I was the operations LPO there till I retired. And then, I guess I had a dream to coach football. I did that at the college, high school level. I worked for the Naval Recruiting District in Pittsburgh from '06 to '08 as the SEAL mentor, training college, high school kids that hadn't graduated yet to get them ready for Bud's. It was the mentor program. Then I got hired at the Steelers, Penguins, Panthers facility in '08 as a pro strength coach, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center Sports Performance Complex. And I did that till 2011, got laid off. Then I moved back to Colorado in 12. And then I went back to Warcom staff in Coronado in 13. And I worked as a senior mission planning systems engineer and an advanced instructor contractor for the SOMPI ATAC program. So I was training SEALs for like 8 years as a contractor. ATAC to use ATAC system on their droid phones and do mission planning and advanced communications and stuff like that. So I retired in December of 22 and moved back to Colorado in May of 23. So I've been back here doing BIG, and the people that you saw at the beginning of the show on my website, most of them I served with, and they agreed to come on as volunteers. So we've been hitting it pretty hard down in New Mexico near Red River, Bobcat Pass, and also in Hans Peak, Colorado, and in the Bags encampment, Savory area, and Battle area of Wyoming. And I got in on this because, like a lot of people I've heard them say, just to be honest, is I saw the In Search Of show on TV when I was a teenager with Leonard Nimoy, and they did a Bigfoot special one year. And it was the first time I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film. And then I even saw the old movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek. And I mean, I actually said, I'm not joking either, I had a life plan laid out with everything I just told you that I did. And I thought when I retire and get older, that's the last thing I'm going to do. So I founded BIG in January of 2023. And here we are 3 years later, based on what Dr. Meldrum taught me in the laboratory at his lab in Pocatello, Idaho, at Idaho State, and then all the phone conferences that we had that were hours and hours. I got a notebook that thick of notes that Dr. Meldrum conveyed to me and teaching me and training me. And, that's pretty much it, but it inspired me, like a lot of other people out there that are good people looking for Bigfoot. And, at this point in my life, being a full-blood retiree, I'm really enjoying it. And this is a great hobby in a way. And it's a great way to spend your retirement, getting out and road trips and, camping and hiking and doing what I've been doing at night. But it's also been a little bit, it's been hellaciously intriguing and exciting because of the way I've been doing this and approaching it based on what Dr. Meldrum taught me and also advised me to do. 100%, it's all come to fruition, based on his advice and his input and training and scientific prowess. Plus, I've applied a huge demeanor aspect to this whole thing of what I learned And what I, just being like most military people, I'll say it candidly, not trying to sound too arrogant, nothing but damn good at. And that's sitting out in the middle of the dark at night by myself in some pretty obscure areas and doing what Doc taught me. And it's really starting to pay up and produce dividends that are incredible because as you'll see when we get into the show and get going here, this year, since I opened the season in May up in Wyoming, due to road closures in the winter, I had to wait for the roads to open up. But I've already had 3 incredible close encounters with the male that I've been being traced and, kind of bouncing back and forth by out there for the last 2 years. And honestly, I'm going to say it candidly tonight, as a retired Navy SEAL and a professional, what I've seen out in the field and what I've done in the last 3 years between Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. I got enough eyewitness stuff of my own, including these 2 events that occurred in the last 2 months in Wyoming, where I went, holy, being blunt, excuse my language, holy shit, because this male keeps getting closer. He's posed no threat. I've been really close to him a couple times. And I mean, I'm talking about 30 to 50 yards. And I got him on night thermal, and some of the still pictures that you'll see tonight will, maybe they'll convince you, but they're pretty compelling. So that's how I got into this. And that's the long story. So here we are.
So let me see. You made a video, about a 1.5-minute video, the last time you were on, and I think I can play it. Let me see if I can put this up and play it for everybody. This is essentially a tribute to Dr. Jeff Meldrum. You got to know Dr. Meldrum pretty well. As a matter of fact, I think you went to his office there at the university.
Yep.
And like you said, he advised you on a whole bunch of areas, a whole bunch of things. And I wish I could remember. I think he said before he passed, I think he said to me that he had not yet had his own personal sighting, or had he, Dan Toth?
No, he actually told me that because I asked him that once when we were up at the university 3 summers ago, and he told me that he didn't. But when he was with Todd Standing a couple years ago, because Doc was pretty open-minded, and he was pretty much the kind of person where he'd give people the benefit of the doubt. So he went and spent some time with Todd a few years ago. Just, I don't know all the details, but he said he got a glimpse of one, but he wasn't really sure. So he discounted it. But yeah, you're right. As far as I know, he told me the same thing, that he'd never actually really seen one in his life, which, I guess I always said that would be like being a fireman. for 30 years and never go into a fire. Never slide down the pole and get a call. It would be kind of frustrating. You know what I mean?
Well, let me ask you this. We're going to have to take a break in about, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something
Yeah.
like that at the bottom of the hour. Let me ask you this. I had, I believe, a sighting of a juvenile Sasquatch probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. That was in Northern California.
Yep.
And that's just me. That's just one. And can I say, in just without a doubt, that's what I know. I think I reasoned myself into thinking, yeah, I don't see any other explanation. I can tell people about that at a later date. This is not the time for that. But I have one. How many observations do you think that you've had, Dan Toth, of Bigfoot since you began?
Between New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming, it's probably about 15, 20 now. 15 or 20. The way and it's based on the fact that I'm doing this from what I learned as a SEAL, applying that, and also with what Dr. Meldrum taught me. And it's pretty hairy at times because, I sit out there like I did as a SEAL in the dark by myself, and I made friends with a lot of wildlife. I got pictures of everything from a wolf to a daggone moose coming up to me in the dark, a bull moose. And I literally, I'm not lying to you guys out there. This moose 2 years ago at Hans Peak Lake came across the road. I was in the meadow. It was almost midnight. He walked around me and I just stood there in the dark. And I was like, what the? I couldn't get back to my car. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get my ass handed to me here. He walked in front of me and laid down on a little rise about 30, 40 yards from me. And he laid down facing me and he went to sleep. And I walked around him for another hour, looking in these runs and gullies that I was tracing with my night vision or my thermal imager, trying to pick up something and, stuff like that. So, I can get hairy at times, but I just keep plugging away. You know what I mean?
Well, moose have a reputation for not being necessarily the kindest critters in the animal kingdom, and they have been known to kill people. I want to make a reference or a comparison here for a moment. We're going to take a break and come back right back. Folks,
Yeah.
that's Dan Toth from B.I.G, the Bigfoot Investigative Group. But I'm going to ask you, when we come back, when we return, how did you come to the procedure that you use with trying to observe Sasquatch? And I make this reference. There's a dude named Rocky Kanaka, and he has a YouTube channel and Facebook and all the other places, and he calls it Sitting with Dogs. And all he does is enter a kennel with a given dog, sit down, and essentially commune with the dog. And the dog gets to the point where his presence is such that the dog tends to relax a little.
Yep.
When we come back, I want to
Yeah.
ask Dan Toth. It seems to me that's kind of what you do, but I want to know for certain. So we'll talk to Dan. Be right back. I'm BZ. This is Access Denied 403 Forbidden. And thanks for being here tonight, folks.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Listen in to the Reaver of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a show equipped for bombast. Tune in Mondays and Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, and 6 p.m. Pacific, featuring a refreshing dose of reality. Jersey Joe fearlessly tackles the tough topics with no nonsense. Just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com, where you can hear the Reaver of Common Sense in action. He may not always be polite. He may not always be refined. But one thing's for sure. He always tells it like it is.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with 7 Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com. 7armors.com. Faithful, vigilant, steadfast, passion.
Are you looking for bold and honest conversation about the issues shaping America? Well, let me welcome you to Unleashed 101 with Jeremy Hansen, where we take you beyond the headlines. We dive into politics and culture, struggles of everyday life. It's raw and unfiltered. If you're ready for truth with a punch, pull up a chair and join us. That's right, Unleashed 101, where real talk feels like home. Find us at unleashed101.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. We look forward to seeing you. Unleashed 101 with Jeremy Hansen.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours.
Amen.
A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional. But it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Folks, thanks for being here tonight. I'm BZ. I am your host of This is Access Denied 403 Forbidden, where we look and examine a lot of stuff. I've had Alan Thomas on before at least twice. We spoke about UFOs. We spoke about cryptids. He's a Bigfoot investigator himself. I plan some shows in the future about, oh no, not conspiracy stuff behind Wuhan 19. Yeah, stuff just like that. And what's happening with globalists. And moreover, what's occurring with, I hope you're aware of these things, about flock cameras, about AI, about what's AI, what's its purpose, why is it here, about the surveillance state that we're being pushed into, and about the digital world, the digital realm. There's so much stuff that we need to know about that, but that's for another day. Right now, we're talking to Dan Toth, and thanks, Dan. He's a retired SEAL, SEAL Team 3. When he retired, he got interested in this, created his own site. Let me see if I can put this up for now, because the computer is not being really zippy right now because the internet is not being zippy. Anyway, this is Dan's site. Go there if you want to find more about his group, the Bigfoot Investigative Group, and what he does. We spoke about that in the first half hour. So, Dan, before we took the break, I said, hey, you have a methodology, and it's not entirely dissimilar to Rocky Kanaka Sitting with Dogs, where you begin to, you're there for a sufficient period of time, the goal being, I'm guessing, for certain personnel, animals, mooses, coyotes, foxes, etc., to just be a little bit more at ease with you. So what do you do with that? What works for you?
Well, I got to be honest, doing the things you do as a Navy SEAL, a lot of times you got to I've got a lot of guys in SF and military can relate to this too, about sitting quiet and being still and being out in the dark. And plus, all the things you do as an SF military soldier, whether you're an Army guy, regular or special forces, you just learn to sit still, be quiet, for what you're doing at night. The old adage goes, your ears are your eyes in the dark, stuff like that a lot of guys that have served in the military know about, whether you're a Ranger or PJ or SEAL or Scout Sniper or whatever. So I sit still. But the big thing that I learned as a boy, and I'm just being candid with everybody here tonight, and I'm not joking, when the animals get close to me out of curiosity, just sitting there, first of all, it poses, a posture of not being threatening to the individual, the creature. But the thing that I do, and I'm not joking, I talk to them. When they get close to me, I start literally talking to them. I say stuff like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's up? Why are you out here walking around the middle of the night?" And I do, and I'm not joking. And I talk to all of them like that. And for some particular reason, it works, because all the animals I get around, they just kind of stop. And I mean, I've had elk and deer, which I've got videos of on thermal imaging on my website you can look at. They've walked up to me in the dark and stood there listening to me 10, 15, 5 feet away. And, wolf, you name it. And I finally took it upon myself last October when I had a sighting at George in Wyoming, late in October. Well, it was, it was right after Doc died. So yeah, it was October, but it was the first time that I made a verbal approach to George. And when I was filming him on thermal by these pine trees, he actually kind of went like this, and I got the impression that he reacted to it. So it's just a matter of being quiet, being still, talking to him in a certain tone of voice, and also doing a lot of stuff that Doc taught me. And plus, I took a few pages from the late, Miss Jane Goodall's forte, what she did bonding with lowland gorillas and stuff like, what was that, in the 70s when she did that, or the 60s, way back then.
Oh, yeah.
And that was from Doc too. So and another thing I did was I sat back for almost 50 years, because I was in SEAL teams and I was waiting, but I watched. I sat back and watched what other people were doing over the years. And I'm not trying to be condescending or sanctimonious, but talking professionally as a retired SEAL now, like even Doc and I agreed on some of these things. We kind of thought to ourselves, what are they doing? You know what I mean? And there's just certain things that aren't going to work with these creatures that I've learned from being out there and around them. And the ones that I've gotten close to on numerous occasions in New Mexico and Wyoming and Colorado, there's been about 4 or 5 incidents where George himself was probably no more than 30 to 45 feet away from me in the dark. I was by myself. He stepped out and I was like, whoa. I was looking right at him, and I had enough time to get some good pictures on my thermal. But that's what I do. That's my forte, and it works. And, a lot of you guys out there too, veterans and other people that are watching, I go by the KISS acronym too, keep it simple. And that's what I do, and it's been working. But the big thing is, again, trying to answer that question as simply as I can, I give Doc Meldrum a lot of credit, because everything Doc taught me for 3 years, I religiously adhere to it, like an SOP, and everybody knows what SOPs are. And everything that Doc taught me is working, and it has worked. And I can say, candidly, that he was spot on about everything he taught me. So he was a great teacher and a great mentor. And like he told me one time in a training session before he passed away, he goes, I'm kind of passing the torch here. And I've got that in my notes. And I was like pretty surprised that he said that. But that's it in a nutshell, what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And I hope that makes sense to you, because it's working.
Let me ask this, and this is a statement from observations made over quite a number of years. When I spoke to Alan Thomas passed away on the operating table 3 times, and he believes that made him susceptible or available for many of the instances and many of the things that he's experienced. So that's him. He's had a wide array of experiences with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, cryptids, paranormal, all sorts of unexplained things.
Yeah.
And that, I think that helped to open the door for him. And he's pretty much convinced of it. Now, let me throw this out to you, Dan Toth. Wouldn't you suspect that there are people who are more receptive to this kind of thing? Because haven't we all seen, Dan included, and the people that are watching right now, haven't you seen people that animals react to in a positive fashion or in a negative fashion? And could you not posit that animals intuit a lot of who we are just by being who they are? In other words, there are some people that animals don't want to have a thing to do with. And there are certain personnel that animals are open to, can be suggestive and will watch or listen. And there's a factor, kind of an unquantifiable factor, that this person is a dog person. This person is a cat person. This person gets along with animals. And wouldn't you suspect, Dan Toth, that you kind of have to come from that point from the beginning, or this is not going to work. You know, there's certain people that this will work for. Alan Thomas, super sharp dude. But because of what he's been through, he has the ability to look inside and see a lot of stuff, quite frankly, I don't have a clue about. Not one at all. But I'd like to think that I have a little bit of a communing ability with animals. And Dan Toth, wouldn't you say that that's something that you or anybody similar to you that wants to be successful here, you kind of got to have?
Yeah, you do. And I tell you, because I've met a lot of people in my life over the years. I mean, I'll be 70 next January already. I can't even believe it. But I've met a lot of people that have that knack or gift about them, whatever you want to call it, with animals. And then I've met people in my life where, you know, like when I remember incidences when I was younger, we went over to people's houses to have a kegger and a team guy party on the weekend, and daggone people that were hosting the party, their dogs went nuts, you know, crazy on some of the guys that, you know, came to the house. They just didn't like them. And it's like, you know.
But animals sense a lot of that stuff, though, don't you think?
Yeah, and it's like I've talked to some women I know, friends of mine and people. I use the analogy like women have that sixth sense, a lot of them, you know, to pick up on a creepy guy, if you will, you know, stuff like that. And these creatures, I know, George, and I'm saying that candidly tonight for the first time, because I've taken 3 years to make sure that I validated irrefutably and corroborated my sightings and findings and work to make sure, but I can say it candidly tonight that they're out there. George is real. You'll see the evidence tonight. Gladys, his partner, female, I named her. I've only seen her once, and that was at Christmas 2 years ago, but they're real. And yeah, you're right. They're at a point on that note that we've been discussing where I'm totally convinced that by his actions, especially in the last year, between Hans Peak, Lake Colorado, and up into Wyoming, where they go back and forth between the winter and the summer, I'm totally convinced he's getting, comfortable with me and used to me. And he's showing himself more often, and his behavior is getting closer. He's getting closer, and I'm seeing him more frequently in this area that I'll explain in a bit. And he's never posed any type of threat or aggression toward me of any nature or form. And in August of 24, when the first time I saw him really close, I was about 45 feet from him. You'll see the picture tonight that it happened so fast, and you'll see the picture of his face in the trees, and we'll go over that. But yeah, that thing with animals, they have a sixth sense, and it's just like, I mean, honestly, when you talk about human nature and human behavior, just like us, I mean, who out there wouldn't honestly look at yourself and admit that, oh, there's some people I like, and there's some people that I don't like. I mean, look at our president right now. Some people love him, on the other side of the fence, they hate him and despise him with a passion. So, human nature is human nature, and so is animal nature. And, you're right. They can pick up on that, and you either got it or you don't. And I think that I've been lucky to have that gift, because I've had it since I was a kid, growing up and hunting down at Blackwater, the Dismal Swamp and stuff, and the other places where I hunted, went out in the woods since I was about 8, 9, 10 years old, back in Virginia and Carolina. So yeah, that plays big and heavily into it. And I kind of thank God I've got that air or gift about me. So I'm lucky.
Folks, we're talking to Dan Toth tonight. He's a retired United States Navy SEAL member of SEAL Team 3. And post-retirement, he's always kind of had an interest in cryptids, specifically Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Athletic guy, decided that he wanted to go out. And, oh, by the way, this is his website. If you want to find out more about him and the group, you can go to bigfootinvestigativegroup.com. bigfootinvestigativegroup.com. And here is the website. All the information that you could possibly want about his group is right there. Has tons of videos, tons of photographs, things that these people have done in the past. So go to bigfootinvestigativegroup.com. But then this is the time where I ask you, Dan Toth, the United States is huge. It's vast. You're not going to be finding anything in cities or areas where there are lots of people, but you, if I'm not mistaken, you still live in Colorado, and Colorado has beautiful mountains, forest, wilderness, and the U.S., Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, the places you've been, New Mexico, those places are huge.
Yep.
They're massive. So how is it that you figured out, you know what? Did you go like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I'm going here? Or how did you figure out that there are certain places that are going to be better for you than there are others? And did Dr. Meldrum have any influence in that as well?
Yeah, he absolutely did, because when I first met him back in January of 23, we talked on the phone for, good God, I remember it was a 3-hour phone talk, 2.5 hours. But he had told me everything, and he also suggested these areas, because he said, I remember him telling me, he goes, if you work this area of New Mexico and Colorado and Wyoming and stay there, his impetus and his philosophy and approach was to not be reactionary. And I'm not reactionary. I've been working these areas for 3 years. And when you see some of the pictures from the stills and the videos, and then also there's a huge correlation between Sasquatch habitat and black bears, because they eat the same diet. They have the same thing,
Okay.
chokeberries, you name it. And you're even going to see a picture tonight, believe it or not, of a huge, real Sasquatch scat. And I'll tell you the story about that when we get to the picture. But Dr. Meldrum, just 3 weeks before he died, wrote me and said, that's pretty, irrefutable and highly probable. I think you're right. But, that's it. You just get out there and do it and run with it. And, just hope and pray for the best. And that's what's been going on based on what Doc has taught me and what I've been doing. Because during the course of all this, I've been amazed, because at first I kept a checklist and a little wheel book, and I was doing all these things and they were coming to fruition. and they were happening, based on the things that Doc had taught me and told me. And then that's why I stuck with it. And then after I got to that, 9 or 10 of these things have happened, and Doc was right. Even the 3 areas, which we'll see a map of that Doc made here in a little bit. So that's what I've been doing, keeping it simple. I did what he taught me to do in these 3 areas. I've stayed in them. And by staying in them, I've seen George a lot, and you'll see that. And then you can see the rest of the evidence in the pictures and the video on my website, because we just didn't have time to go through it tonight. But yeah, about 90% of it's what Doc taught me, and it's worked. And then 10% of what I've applied from being a SEAL, and then, sitting back watching people, do stuff where, you kind of go, what are they doing? Being blunt about it. It's like, what the hell are they doing? So that's how that worked out. Yeah, Doc played a huge part in it.
So the doc that Dan Toth is referencing is Dr. Jeff Meldrum. And I met him with Dan Toth last year at the Bigfoot Investigative Group Conference in Broomfield. And there's Dan and the fat guy. Anyway, Jeff Meldrum was a gracious, highly educated individual. And in terms of that, how do you have any idea, Dan Toth, how it was that Dr. Meldrum was able to come to you and say, okay, I think I have these areas that are going to work for you. These are some of the places that I recommend you begin. And I'm guessing that you kind of sifted through these areas and decided from that, this is going to work for me. This place is going to work for me. This place is not going to work for me at all.
Right. I went through, yeah.
And then once you identified those places, then it seems to, or correct me, it seems that you've said, okay, I like this place, and this place. And they're the locations that I'm going to concentrate on.
Right.
Because it seems like you're saying something similar to, okay, I found a cool place and I'm going to keep going back. And one of the main reasons I want to keep going back is they will become more at ease and more familiar with me.
Yeah.
Or am I like way off?
No, you're right, because Doc recommended these 3 areas based on one of the high-end pointers that he threw at me was, he goes, I know nobody's worked in these areas. And he goes, I'm totally convinced that there's got to be some out there. And if you go back and forth and do what I tell you to do to trace them, and I want everybody to make sure you understand I'm not tracking them. I wait till they migrate between Wyoming in the summer and then back down by Clark, for the milder winters. And then actually I had some fortuitous, insane luck in New Mexico because when Doc told me to focus on that area around Red River and Bobcat Pass 3 years ago, I actually got in contact with Sheriff Jerry Ogriff of the Taos County Sheriff's Department. And he had contacted me through a guy that he knew, that worked as a security officer at the Chevron mine down there. And sure enough, I had a phone conference with Sheriff Ogriff. Well, he was the undersheriff now because his term had ended. But he told me all about sightings from people. And Eric, the guy at the Chevron mine, showed me pictures of footprints. So he said they were heard and seen a lot at Bobcat Pass down a little bit east of Red River, New Mexico. So I went out there and started sitting at night, and you'll see a picture tonight and the video on the first incident of sighting took place, believe it or not, on October 20th of 2023 at about 1 a.m. in the morning. This male Sasquatch, I was out in the meadow at the foot of this hill covered with pine trees, and he just belted out this hellacious scream at about 1 a.m. and he did it 3 times, and I finally picked up on where he was at. and got him on camera. But, when you put all this together, the thing I'm saying is that in these areas, I got lucky. A couple things fell into place. And like I said, I followed what Doc taught me to do and stay in them and don't be reactionary and, keep the faith and be patient too. It's like hunting, or fishing. You go out in your boat and you're fishing, you might check under these this run or this log or those overhangs for bass or whatever, you know what I mean? And, after a few months of being out in Clark near Sand Mountain 2 years ago when I finished working down in New Mexico, because the New Mexico kind of went cold. I really think they took off. But this work that I've been doing in Wyoming and in Colorado has been very fruitful. And that's just the way it's been going.
Let me make an observation, if I will, and then we're going to take a break. We got about 3 minutes before the top of the hour break. Folks, we're talking to Dan Toth, and Dan is a Bigfoot investigator and a researcher. He created the B.I.G. Bigfoot Investigative Group. And when we come back, post-break, we'll go into all sorts of photographs that he has of his most recent exploits. And Dan can explain and will explain all of them, what we see, what he found, etc. But Sasquatch, Bigfoot, cryptids, that kind of thing, they're really popular right now. And I'm sure people are making lots of money over these shows. And I can't help but think that when you go into an area and you're making all kinds of noise with people with huge cameras, etc., that it's not necessarily going to yield a vast amount of results. I could be wrong, but it seems to me the best way to do things to try to actually find Bigfoot or locate a Sasquatch, whichever name you wish to give to them, is to sit down like you and be quiet. Yep. And be silent and let them get used to you instead of constantly moving around, creating a lot of noise, etc. Well, there's a lot of Sturm und Drang in the Bigfoot community, and it's making a lot of money, but you do it way, way differently. And I think that's what sets you apart from a lot of the other folks. Because, what do I know? Almost nothing. But it seems to me that the protocol that you're using, if I just had to, make a wild ass guess, is probably the one that's going to yield the best results. Having said that, I'm BZ. That's Dan Toth. When we come back after the break, he's going to show us a whole bunch of photographs from his latest excursion. Folks, come right back, please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Mission log. Intrigue. I mean, let's face it, who's even counting anymore? The Lost Wanderer is officially off course, chasing rogue rocket launches, fringe science, and things that probably violate causality. If it burns fuel, spends time, or makes scientists very uncomfortable, yeah, I'm probably going to talk about it. Every other Sunday on KLRN Radio, The Lost Wanderer, because space doesn't come with a roadmap, and honestly, I wouldn't follow if it did.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Hey fellas, are you mission ready? You need to check out Mission Ready Men via Earl Big E Jackson on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and noon Eastern. It's a show that equips you to navigate our society's challenges from a biblical perspective with courage and conviction. Tune into Mission Ready Men as we examine our culture through the prism of biblical truths, teachings, and how to apply them in our daily lives. Prepare to step up, stand out, and step into your role as a man as ordained by God. That's Mission Ready Men, hosted by Earl Jackson on the SHR Media Network. And get mission ready.
Want to make an immediate difference in the life of a critically ill child? You have the ability to do that right now. Make a donation to Dream Makers for Life, the organization that restores dreams to seriously ill children and their families. You can sponsor a dream pack for a child, which contains a clear PVC backpack, a dry erase board adventure coloring book, a journal, and dry erase markers to inspire a critically ill child to envision a future adventure and hope. Want to become a dream maker for life yourself? Dreamforlife.org. That's dreamforlife.org. Child, help a family. There is always hope.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And I'm BZ, and I'm back. The gentleman over on my left, your right, my left, is the actor you've known for all these years, Dan Toth from B.I.G, the Bigfoot Investigative Group. His website is Spectacularo, and it looks something like this. Go to BigfootInvestigativegroup.com, BigfootInvestigativegroup.com. For those of you who just may have tuned in minus vodka, it's BigfootInvestigativegroup.com. Speaking of which, I have mine, folks. Do you have yours? Skull, brother. Look, and you've got a B.I.G mug. I
put that on there myself.
I bet your mug doesn't have your initials.
And that's on the other side.
Like mine does. So anyway, Dan Toth of B.I.G, thanks for being here tonight.
It's great to be here.
The second part of the show is essentially going to be wrapped around, hey, you've been on some recent expeditions. And so maybe let's talk about some of those. Would you like me to start the slideshow here for you?
Yeah, I'll just talk real quick, give everybody a heads up. I guess the forte that I employed, modus operandi, whatever you want to call it, I go out for a night or two and that's it. I go into the area and I just sit. I usually go out around this time of the year. It doesn't get dark, 9:30, and I usually stay out to like maybe 3, 4, sometimes 4:30 in the morning, depending upon what's going on. And in this area that I've been working in predominantly between Colorado and Wyoming for the last 2 years, it's been incredibly mind-boggling. And like I said, all of you can go to my website to get the rest of the photographs and the pictures that I've taken. And I do my work at night because it's easier to see them and the rest of the animals on thermal imaging at night in the dark than it is to try to see them in the daytime. So that's why I do it. Plus it's more quieter, and most mammals are nocturnal anyway. So really most of the animals out there, I'm convinced now, know me. And I've got pictures of I got one fox. I named her Franny. She comes up and lays down beside me at night.
Oh, cool.
And I use, yeah, Franny's cool because we have definitely become friends. I got video of her in the daytime. But the thing about I learned, and I love it, when she's with me at night, wherever she looks, I know there's something there. So I look that way too. You know what I mean? It's like having a little watchdog with you. And it's cool because like I said, you can see great. And then I met a doe and I named her Mary. She had 2 fawns last year and disappeared while she birthed them, and then showed up a couple months later. Well, this was in 24. And she came out of the woods one night, and I got video of that with her 2 fawns. They were a couple months old, still had spots, and she just walked right up beside me in the dark and laid down beside me while I was sitting there with her 2 fawns, like toying around. So it's pretty cool, but we'll go into that once we get rolling here, I'll go over the pictures.
But see, it's like I believe firmly that animals have a grasp of
They do.
who is a threat and who doesn't present a threat.
Right.
And you're in their environment and you have to respect them and their environment and not do what a bunch of dopes in, I don't know, say Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah.
Let's walk up to a moose. I know, let's walk up to a bison, because that guarantees always excellent circumstances.
Right.
Dan Toth, let me ask you a question that I have not up to this point ever pitched at you, and it just popped into my brainulus. I do not know why.
Mm-hmm.
In the process of doing your investigations and going out, and you're doing it specifically, I'm guessing, because you kind of want to get as far away from civilizazione as you can. Have you ever come across people that just kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, just barge upon you that you hadn't anticipated?
No, because where I work at, it's amazing how sparse the population is out there, but it's also amazing in this area, which Doc recommended. It's like nobody ever hardly goes out there. I mean, really, even in the summer, as a matter of fact, last year between May and November, I was amazed, but no, I don't run into that many people. Sometimes at the campground where I stay, there's people there. And then encampment, the town is about, 30, 40 minutes down the mountain. But when I'm out there in the dark at night, no, I mean, once in a while, like where I sit sometimes near the road, a truck will go by, like a logging truck or somebody. But other than that, I don't see people out there. I just see animals all the time, and a lot of them. And then I see George. And tonight, with some of the stuff that's happened in the last 2 months, you'll be pretty amazed by it when you see these pictures and what's going on.
Let me, if I can, then make sure that I'm differentiating the stuff that's actually going on. When you go out there, and you just said this, so that's why I thought, oh, hey, I didn't know that occurred. You have a separate campsite that you'll stay at over a period of 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it is, the period of time that you're there. And you're over there in that campsite, but that's not where you're making your observations. You're not camping where you're watching what's going on. Those are two completely different places, correct?
Yeah, and they're pretty far apart. Matter of fact, on that note, when I first went back out in the middle of May, when they opened the road going over the snowy range between Centennial, Saratoga, and Encampment for the winter, I was amazed because I went to the campground where I usually stay, and I pulled in there with my car. No one was there because it really wasn't technically or officially opened yet for the season. But I went to this campsite where I normally camp, and I just broke out my stove and cooked a meal for dinner. And while I was there, I'm not kidding, I was amazed because Gladys and George started tree knocking. And I was in the campground by myself at sunset. And, one of the things I want to expound on with everybody that I've learned, and I confirmed this with Doc, is that when the first time Gladys and George knew of my presence near this creek in the lake last year in May, it was in May, you should have heard the ferocity and the intensity and the volume and the tone the first time they sensed or knew I was there of their tree knocks. It was like, you're like, whoa. It's one of those things where you just stand there and go, holy shit. I mean, but now, a year later, and I'll tell you a story in a bit that'll really send shivers up your spine, because it sure did mine. Happened last August, July. The tree knocks between George and Gladys in a year have diminished in volume and intensity and, ferocity. They're more gentle, more amicable, more, light now. And I talked to Doc about this too before he passed away, because it was already, rearing its head last year. I noticed it. And even Doc agreed with me. He said that makes me think that their tree knocks are toned down now because they're more comfortable with you and their presence. They know who you are. And instead of going, hey, hey, they're going to go, hey, it's him again. That makes sense to you. You know, and that's right up there with Ron Moorhead and the Sierra Sounds. I mean,
well, it's kind of like the first time you encountered them or they encountered you, it was like, get the hell out. And in case you're not receiving the information properly,
exactly,
making it known to you.
Yeah, well, the first time I heard him tree knocking last year, and you can listen to it. I didn't get it the whole 2 hours, but I recorded about 6 minutes of it and then clipped it. You can watch it and listen to it on the website. It was what was it last? No, it was June, July. But anyway, you can listen to the tree knocks of them communicating back and forth. And I recorded about 6 minutes of it, 6.5 minutes, where there's two knocks down in the gully. Then George responds up the mountain. And then I'm convinced that it was Gladys down in the gully by the creek. She knocks 2 more times, and then George responds again. And then I pulled an experiment a couple of weeks later that I'll tell you the story about in a bit. So,
okay, well, let's. This might be a good time to go into. I have on your site, there are some places indicating Hans Peak, Colorado, Red River, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Would you like me to put those maps up so people can see those?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's see if I can make this bigger. Okay, I can't. Never mind. That was a bad idea. Move along, BZ. Move along.
Yeah, there's just little red circles with the areas in New Mexico and Colorado, Wyoming, where I've been working.
So let's start with the you sent me a PowerPoint, and something tells me that, BZ, you can probably install PowerPoint inside StreamYard, but I'm not mod enough to be able to do that. So I had to copy all the stuff up here. So the beginning of the PowerPoint is basically this. This is your progress report for July of 2026. The motto of Bigfoot Investigative Group, by the way, folks, if you didn't see, it's right here, to prove that they are big time. So let's go to the first one here. This is your dedication to Dr. Meldrum. Who's the gentleman that's on the right?
Yeah, that's Mike McMahon. He's on the staff page on the website. Me and Mike served together at SEAL Team 3. We deployed with SEAL Team 3 Charlie Platoon in '88. And then Mike was on the Navy parachute team for a few years. And that was in July of 23 when Doc finally invited us to come up to his lab. And that's his laboratory at Idaho State, Pocatello. And we spent 3 days there getting trained rigorously by Doc. And right there, we went over a full day from 9 o'clock to about 3, I think it was. About 6 hours of everything you need to know about the legitimacy and validity and reality of Sasquatch prints, including, the mid-tarsal break, the anatomy of the foot, the difference in it. And then we also went over dermal lines and ridges that are in a lot of footprints that Doc's got in his collection. And I think I found out that Doc, donated his collection to Matt Moneymaker at BFRO, I think, after he passed. I think he did. But that was us in his lab back in July of 23, me and Mike. And that's who Mike is. So,
to me, that has to rank with that is such a treat and a privilege to have actually had Dr. Meldrum invite you into his office and into his lab. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dan Toth, did he not have, I think he had the largest collection of casts?
Yeah, hundreds. I mean, there's other pictures we've got of his lab where he had file drawers and file drawers of hands, feet, even he had a juvenile collection of, juvenile, which I've gotten pictures of near Summit Creek in Colorado and Columbine. I'm convinced George and Gladys have a juvenile because I got his footprints at Christmas 2 years ago, at 24 in the snow, where he came down to a creek to get a drink. But yeah, Doc had hundreds and hundreds of casts, feet of all sizes, knuckles, handprints. It was crazy. And, when the first time I went there, this is what really hit me, knowing what I know. He had casts that were so pristine, where the, conditions were perfect for the foot, but also the dermal lines and the ridges that were evident in some of these footprints or casts that he had, which, like, the swirl lines on your fingerprints and on your fingerprint and stuff. And the first time I saw that, I was like, how could, there's no way. And plus, not only that, but we talked about, height, weight ratio, and then density of the soil and the topsoil and the dirt and everything. And some of those prints that Doc had in his collection would have taken something between, I think, if I remember, 850 to 1,100 pounds to force that footprint into the soil where it was recovered. And if you can show me a human being that can walk around with 1,100 pounds on his back and fake Sasquatch footprints, to make those kind of prints, because we just don't have the weight to do it. It's impossible. And those are little things that I learned. So yeah, that's that.
So did Dr. Meldrum in his lab, and he had many, many casts. Were those predominantly ones that he had made, or were they donated to him mostly?
No, they were donated to him, and then a lot of them he went and investigated, like the Skookum cast. He had that, which was incredible. And then he even had a cast which blew my mind. He pulled out of a drawer where I think it was Washington, where some people at a logging site actually saw a female years ago sit on the hillside near a creek, on the edge of the creek, and watch them for a couple hours. And they were watching each other from like 150, 200 yards away. Everybody saw it. And she took off, and they went up the hill, and just keeping this Reader's Digest version, to where she was sitting on the bank of the creek watching them from the top of the hill or the side of the hill. And they actually found an imprint in the soil on the edge of the creek and the bank where she was sitting, and she left a perfect imprint of her buttocks and her thighs with hair, and also her genitals, her sphincter and her vagina were in the imprint. And Doc showed it to me in his lab. And when I saw it, I was like, good grief, you got to be kidding me. He goes, nope, because that's a real one. And to see stuff like that, it can't be faked from the weight, the lines, and everything else. So yeah, he had a heck of a collection, and it pretty much covered the gamut of everything you could dream of.
Well, when you sit down, folks, in a mud bank, things are going to happen, and things are going to get captured, so to speak. But that makes perfect sense. Well, that goes back to his anthropological and anatomical background, and his schooling, and what he did, which makes it all so cool. I was blessed to have met him for the short period of time that I saw him, a day. And then he went on to other places. Used to be able to see him many places, many conventions. I was lucky. I was blessed. Only at the last moment did I decide, hey, let's go see this guy at Bigfoot Investigative Group in Colorado. Lucky I did. What a blessing it was for you to have really had that amount of time with him. A man who was a true scholar, a true researcher, a true investigator, and brought science to the issue.
Yep.
I have to say, I wish that all the skeptics who don't believe in Sasquatch Bigfoot could have sat in that room where I was as Dr. Jeff Meldrum gave a 2 to 3 hour presentation of just on the Patterson Gimlin film. And a host of slides, a host of videos,
Yeah.
a host of articles and photographs and information that led me to believe, now, if you had seen this, you would exit that room going, yeah, you know what? He didn't just talk about this stuff. He showed me why this is possible
Yeah.
from a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, enough of me bloviating because that's who I am. Let's go to the next slide here. And
Yeah, this is great.
Tell us what this is, Dan Toth.
This is Bobcat Pass, just east of Red River. And this was about, well, you can see by the timer on my night thermal there, it's 2 minutes after midnight. And as you can see, I walk in the field with this big herd of elk. And I was walking with them, on the outside of their picket line there, I call it. And where the white arrow is, all of a sudden they stopped and they looked up, and then he stood up, and that's the Sasquatch down there in Red River. And then you can see the little square on his back. And I don't know if can you see my cursor there?
No.
No, you can't see my cursor. But anyway, where the white arrow is, as you're looking at his back, that's the top left side of his head. The little black square is the thermal signature in the middle of his back. And then the V going out on each side, those are his arms, and you can see how big he is. When he stood up and I saw him and he took off, I was like, holy crap. And they move fast. They are elusive. And, but that's him right there. And that was about a month after the first sighting on October 20th of that year, 3 years ago. So we go to the next one because I don't want to run out of time.
Was that a Sasquatch that you had met before or met again?
I don't know if it was the same one from the month before. It could have been possible, but I haven't gotten close enough to, I talked to Doc about like that, identifying, kind of like what they do with the humpback whales in Maui. They know who the humpback whales are just by looking at the print on their flukes on their tail. They ID them by taking pictures, and I haven't been able to get that close yet. But this is a great picture from 2 years ago near Hans Peak Lake. And this is where the moose, just about an hour later, came down the road, named him Bullwinkle. But these people went by hauling a trailer in that truck. And I was looking around, and I was standing out in the middle of the field there. And all of a sudden there, I looked and saw George step out, that little black quick standing there. He's very big. He's standing there looking at me across the road. And he's on that thermal imager set on black hot there. And you can see the heat around the wheels in the back of the truck and the trailer.
Okay.
But where George is there, that black spot, that's George. And that was another time I saw him. And he looked right at me, and I tried to get video of him, but he took off and went off to the right and disappeared. So we go to the next one. So that was 2 years ago near Hans Peak Lake when I was working there. What was that? I think that was around August, September. Yeah. Next one.
Was November 2024.
November. Yeah.
If you had to guesstimate, Dan Toth, what would you wager was the height of George?
At least 8 feet, because I've measured I taught ATAC to Special Forces guys at Warcom as a senior MPSE from 13 to 22, and I know how to use ATAC. I taught it, and you can measure horizontal, vertical distance with ATAC, and you have to do all this stuff. I won't go into it, but the clear pictures I got of him, I put him at least 8 feet, 8 feet tall. I think he weighs about 1,100. That would be my guess.
And if you had to, what is ATAC? Explain ATAC to folks.
It's an Android tactical assault kit, and Special Forces guys, police officers, everybody's using it now. It's a Android-based tactical program. I won't get into it in too much detail, but you can put it on cell phones. And now Special Forces operators have all this command and control communication and everything right there. They have reach back capability. They can plot courses. They can look at live satellite feeds on the ground from a Reaper or whatever up there and get real-time intelligence. Tactical, you can even see people, moving around. Law enforcement's using it. Everybody. Matter of fact, when I was at Warcom from 13 to 22, I think I taught 20-something law enforcement agencies on it too that came to me from all over, including federal, and said, "Hey, will you teach us on this stuff, Dan?" And I said, "Hell yeah, sit down and shut up."
Here we go.
Here we go. So yeah, that's what ATAC is. And they've got a civilian version now called ATAC Civ. And it's really easy to use once you learn it. And it's an insane great tool for command control communication. And I think they call it C5II now. It's up to 5 Charlies, I call it. But you can download the civilian version of it now and put it on your Android and use it in the field. And you can navigate with it. It's got a built-in compass, satellite, you name it. Everything's on there. It's like crazy.
And it's by that helped you to gauge the height and the size of George.
Yeah, because you can take George and blow him up, and you have your digital data in the ATAC program on your datum, and you can draw a line, and you can measure his height, and it'll tell you. And it's just like if you want to go from point A to point B, navigating when you're doing an op or doing land nav or whatever, during your insertions, you got to navigate to get your target, and you can draw lines with a bearing from your insertion point to your first leg. And then it'll tell you want to go 030 on this course for, a mile and a half. It gives you a real-time readout of your progress because it's, satellite. And it's telling you where you're at along that line. Kind of like, it's just like the GPS in your car that we're using in our cars and stuff, Garmin's and stuff like that now. You know exactly where you're at, where you're going, what you're doing. It's almost virtually impossible to get lost anymore, but it has a horizontal vertical measuring tool where you draw a line and it'll tell you what the height or distance of that line is. So I've done that. George, I think roughly probably George is about 8 feet, maybe a little over 8 feet tall.
Okay. Let's go to the next one. And you explain this, please, sir.
Yeah. Well, last August, 3 weeks before Doc passed away, I went out one night at this creek, and that's the side of the road. I have a western spot where I sit at night. I have a central spot, and then an eastern spot, and I go back and forth between those three and sit for an hour at a time, and then I leave. Because sooner or later, it's getting to the point I see my wildlife friends or George. But last year in August, 1st of August, it was about first week of August, I think, I caught a glimpse of George right at dusk when I got out of my car. And over there in that picture to the right up there in the corner, that's the guardrail. And then in the lower left corner, you can see the white line on the road. But I caught a glimpse of George through my thermal imager, and he took off. It was really close. He was right across the street, not even 40 yards away, maybe 50, not even that. But I came back the next day in the daylight because I was going to go down in that area. There's a creek down that embankment there to the left. Parked my car up at the end of the guardrail and got out. And I looked and I saw that big black glob from a distance. And the first thing that went through my head was, I thought to myself, I said, damn, that's right where I was standing last night. So I got my gun. I carry a revolver and a shoulder holster just for security, just in case, you never know. And I walked up to that thing, and it was the biggest pile of scat right there you could ever dream of. And if you look at the bottom center of the picture, you'll see the toe of my foot in my shoe, and even a black bear can. The closest thing that could take a dump like that out there, I don't mean to be crude, would be a black bear. But that thing had 3 layers of scat in it where it had eaten 3 things. One of the first things I learned from Doc about the digestive system of Sasquatch, they have a super long, huge gut. And that thing had 3 layers of stuff in it from the left side to the right. And I know the left side was chokeberries, and I think the middle part of it was some type of meat, maybe a small animal. And then the right side, I'm pretty sure, was bark. But if you look closely, right over the top of my foot, you see those 2 brown marks
Okay.
that are like making a triangle there. See the marks in the gravel?
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are actually where George squatted down. That's his heel on his right foot. And then that's his, up at the top, that's his foot in the front where he leaned forward. And he had just come up out of the creek, and that discoloration was probably from the mud and the, his feet got wet coming across the creek. But he took a dump right there where I was standing the night before, and those marks that you see in the gravel are his feet and remnants where the moisture was drying out, where he left his foot marks. Just like if you were to squat down in the woods to take a dump like that, not meaning to be crude, how you spread your feet at a 30-degree angle. And I sent that to Doc. I went up to the Continental Divide because that's the only place I can get cell coverage right away. And I sent it to Doc, and he was like flabbergasted. And he said, that's probably a highly, then I said, look at my foot. What do you know out there that can poop that big? And he goes, nothing. He goes, but then again, with the marks, I was convinced. So I don't know what George's motive was for pooping there where I stood the night before, but I'm convinced 100% that he left his footprints there where he squatted down, and he took a dump right where I was standing the night before. And Doc wrote me, that was the last time I worked with Doc before he passed. And I've got his email. He wrote me back and said that's highly, I'd say 100% totally probable. So,
That's just a happy little hello between me and you. That's all. Folks, we're going to take a final break. That's Dan Toth. I'm BZ. You're watching the show Access Denied, 403 Forbidden. So let's take a break like other people do and come right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where leftists are running out of metal for the safety pins of their soothing red diapers, one man stands alone, attempting to fundamentally change America, one leftist diaper at a time. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, is guiding you through the maelstrom of Democrat leftists and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Listen to BZ Saloon on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central, and 11 p.m. Eastern on the SHR Media YouTube channel, Twitch, KLRN, Rumble, and X at BZ Saloon. It's one great late-night conservatarian talk radio show. Be there. Aloha.
Hello, friends. You have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name is Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRN Radio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRN Radio.
It's Sean from the Edge of Liberty. Just like the Bidens, I too am moving. Only in my case, it's days and times. That's right, you can now find the Edge of Liberty Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on 11 Eastern on the SHR Media Network. Join me as we talk politics, news, alcohol, fun, not so much fun, clowns, small kittens, large kittens, dogs, amoebas, and anything else that just pops into my mind while I'm on the air. That is Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast, on YouTube, X, KLRN Radio, Facebook, Twitch, and anywhere else a good podcast is found. Please check out our website, shrmedia.com. I will see you live on the air.
Attention, all patriotic women of faith. Yep, I'm talking to you, sis. Are you looking for high quality, super soft apparel that reflects your love for country and your devotion to God? Look no further than Carry Girl Gear. Picture this. You rocking a tee so soft it's like being hugged by a cloud, all while showing off your love for God and country. Sounds dreamy, right? Well, welcome to reality, babes, because that's what we're all about here at Carry Girl Gear. We specialize in super soft tees, tanks, and more, designed specifically for the strong, patriotic woman who proudly wants to carry their message of faith and freedom. When you shop with us, you're not just getting a t-shirt. You're joining a community of like-minded women who are proud to wear their beliefs straight on their tees. So whether you're sipping sweet tea on the porch or leading the charge for faith and freedom, do it in a Carry Girl tee. Because life's too short for stiff, boring tees. CarryGirl.com, where faith and freedom meets fashion.
Independence. With that declaration, America was born. Inspired by a belief in the God-given rights of every human being, and in the good that comes from exercising these rights well. The founders of our great nation chose independence. As do we. Hillsdale College accepts no government funding because independence makes possible the good to which we aspire.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm BZ. That's me right here. Over next to, oh, wrong way. Point the right way, BZ. Right there is Dan Toth. And he is here tonight from the B.I.G, Bigfoot Investigative Group. Go check out their website, BigfootInvestigativegroup.com, BigfootInvestigativegroup.com. And before we were rudely interrupted by things that I programmed because I'm sort of rude myself, Dan was talking to us about some of his newest excursions. And the last slide that we looked at was this. And he explained, well, this is what you're really seeing. This is, when you gotta go, kids. Or words to that effect, Senator. Shall we go to the next slide, sir?
Yeah, I'll try to speed it up because we're running out of time. I'll get a little bit more abbreviated. Okay, this was my first trip this year. You can see it's 1:42 in the morning. I frequent this meadow, and there's George, the black. It's on black hot.
Okay.
George came out at about 1:42. You see the arrow pointing at him there by the pine tree. That pine tree is about 11, 12 feet tall. So that gives you an idea. And there's a rise that goes down back there. That's George doing the Bigfoot thing, looking at me and peeking. Okay, we can go to the next one when I start zooming in on him.
Okay.
So you can see the circle there. That's the original at 1 power. And then I went into 8. And these are the best I could get from stills of him peeking at me. And you can see if you look at the clock, I did flip-flop them because they were clear, but he stood there for almost an hour looking at me. And that one shot there where the arrow's at on black hot on the lower right corner, you can see George's head, his huge shoulders and his upper torso. And that V is like where his, right between his pecs on his upper chest. And as you can see, there's a little bit of white. That's his face where he's, doesn't have beard and hair. That's George. That's one of the best shots I got of him so far up to that point. Okay, we can go to the next one.
If you had to guess, what kind of a distance were you?
That was about 45 yards, maybe 40, 50 yards, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Because I got to admit, too, there's a close-up of him, and you can see the white from his face. That's his head and shoulders. And he's just standing there looking. And, it's amazing. They joke about hide and seek champion of the world and all, but they are elusive, and they've got the patience of a saint and a nun. I couldn't believe how he just stood there. I've sat and just, like I said earlier, as a seal in the dark. But that's George. That's a good shot of him standing there full blown, as close as I could get with my ATN device, looking at me from about, that's zoomed in at 8 power. So he's probably about 45, maybe 50 yards at the max. I'm pretty good at guesstimating distance too, because I was a sniper in 3 SEAL platoons as well. So I know about that stuff.
So let me ask you this in more terms of an animal that isn't a threat to you. but it's a pretty amazing thing to say that you saw an animal that isn't customarily seen, and he doesn't move for an hour. And I'm
Yep.
guessing at that point, are you stationary also? You're unmoving? You're
Yeah,
sitting or standing?
I just stood there, and I didn't film the whole thing, but I kept looking up after I got good film footage, which you can see on my website if you go look at the clip of the film footage. And it's incredible, because anybody who knows how to look at thermal imagery will know right away. You'll say, what the hell is that? Because there's no person that big. Bears don't look like that. I know profiles of everything you can dream of. But yeah, he stood there for about an hour, and then he took off. And then I even had elk and deer on both sides of me. They were all loitering and browsing. And that's another thing. There's been a couple times when the elk that I was with looked up and George was there at a distance, and they don't even seem to be bothered by his presence. They don't act alarmed. They don't flee. They don't get jitty. And that's why those are the kinds of things that I'm seeing out there on my own while I'm doing this, where I'm going, man, these animals, they're not threatened by them. But anyway, that's that. Yeah, it lasted for about an hour, that encounter. Matter of fact, it was going on 2 a.m. and I thought, okay, I'm going home now. I did. So I just packed it up and went. And that night, the campground wasn't open yet. So I was staying down at the hotel and encampment for the night. I stayed at the hotel and encampment.
Well, let me ask you this then, because again, this just popped into my brain.
Yeah.
The animals did not seem to be threatened by the presence of Bigfoot.
Nope.
And I'm guessing you didn't feel like you were threatened by the presence of Bigfoot. And the reciprocal would seem to be true. He didn't seem to be threatened by you.
Right.
But has there been a time, not in this journey, but perhaps others in the past, where you were leery, you were making observations, and you were thinking to yourself, I don't know how really comfortable I am right now watching this creature. Has that ever occurred?
Yeah, well, last August, real quick, at the creek, they were tree knocking between me, and I could tell that they were close down in the creek gully and up the mountain behind me, or the hill. And I could tell they were close by the tree knock. So I got in my car, I walked to my car, got in my car, and I drove down the road about a minute or so and just turned around and came back, hoping that I would catch whoever was down in the gully, going up across the road. Because some people I've heard have done that, where they went down the road, turned around, and came back, and were lucky enough to catch them in their headlights. Well, that didn't happen. So I said, oh, damn it. So I got out of my car, parked, and I walked up the hillside to this pine trees where I sit. And I sat down, and Franny actually came out from the dark across the road under the guardrail, and she froze at the edge of the road. And I was like looking at her, and when she froze, I knew right away, and I'm not kidding, there was a tree knock right behind me, and I couldn't have been 50 feet, and it was pretty loud. And I just froze, I admit, and I reached for my revolver because I could tell it was really close. So I think it was Gladys. She was right behind me. Then I heard a tree knock from up the hill, and it was lighter. And then I heard Gladys take off, and I just sat there because I thought, I don't know what to do. I don't want to do anything. I'm not going to move. And then I heard her go up the mountain, and that was it. And then I heard her tree knock about, I don't know, maybe a couple 100 yards away. And then George responded. I'm just saying it was him and her because that's what I'm pretty sure it is. They're the only two out there. But that was a pretty hairy incident. And then when you see the picture in a bit, in August of 24, when I caught George in the trees over by Summit Creek, you can see how close he was to me that night. All right, we can go to the next one. Now this happened on my trip 2 weeks ago. That black spot is George's shoulder, and I caught him moving in that opening in the trees and the bushes there. And I just stood there and froze, and you can see it's 11:28 down in the lower right corner. You go to the next one, and then all of a sudden boom. That, my friends, is a real Sasquatch sticking his head out of that opening in the vegetation. That's George, and he's like 30 yards away, maybe 35. And he's looking at me face to face. You can see his huge shoulders. You can see how he's filling the opening. And if you look at the opening after he vacates it again in the next frame to the right, you can actually see the dark outline and the good line outline of his upper torso at his trapezius muscle, his face, his head, and his deltoid. That's his right deltoid and his upper chest at the top of the vegetation. So that was the closest I've been to him. And he looked right at me and then he took off. So you can see him right there, how close he is.
So what do you think in terms of distance? You said what, 25, 30 yards?
Yeah, it may be 35 at the most, maybe somewhere in there. But I just stood there and he looked right at me. And then you can see where he took off. That's him sticking his head out, and then he was gone. And if you look at the timer down there in the lower right corner, you see 11:28, and then it turned it to 11:29, just not even a few seconds later. But that's how fast they can come and go. That's the third closest I've been to him, or fourth. So we'll go to the next one.
Okay, the closest you've been to him. What
Right.
is the closest that you've ever been, do you think, to an animal, a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot?
The closest I've ever been
Yes.
was in. You'll see the picture in a bit. Was when he
Oh,
was
okay.
when he was in the aspen trees near Summit Creek back in 24. I caught a glimpse of his eyes in my car going down the road, and I got out, turned my car off, and I walked to the edge of the road in this little clearing on the logging roads up there by Summit Creek and Big Red, they call it. And I looked up, and there he was. I heard him reach up, and he pulled the aspen branch down, and I didn't even have time to get my thermal out, so I took pictures of him with my phone, and we'll see that in a bit. So
okay. And what is this here?
this is great because so everybody understands this area where I do my work. It's like a big, bold amphitheater, so I can move around and get a good view down into this whole area. That's a wilderness. There's nothing allowed in there, and that's where George frequents. But I was up on the road by the Continental Divide Lookout trailhead, and I was standing there looking out, and then I see these elk over to the right. And then all of a sudden, George stepped out, and you can just from the distance, it's hard, I know, but I saw it. But that signature there where the arrow's pointing, that's George standing there looking at the elk. And I was watching him. And then over time, you can see, you go to the next one down there in the right corner, it's 11:09. And then the white line in this one, almost 27 minutes later, was George moving from that spot, which was a couple of miles over to the highway. And that signature there is George, where I watched him move over a half hour. And then he went across the road. That's where I filmed him before in that area. See the white line of the road. And then he went up and got lost and disappeared, going up the mountain there toward, I think, Silver Lake or whatever it is. But that little signature is George. And I watched him move and then go across the road. And he's big. He moves fast when he wants to. And he was moving vertical, bipedal. And I sat there and thought to myself, holy crap, he can haul ass. That's why I don't even try to track them. I'm not going to ever try to stay up with them because you never do it. They move too quick. They're too strong and fast. Okay, next one, because I know I don't want to run out of time.
Oh, you got lots of time. Don't worry about that. My show,
Okay.
I'll be the determinant, folks, of how much time we get. Hey, let me
All
ask
right.
you a question that again just popped into my brain.
Yeah.
Elk, moose. Do you believe that they're prey for Bigfoot?
Well, yeah, because they, like Doc said, they eat the same thing. They have the same thing as a black bear. They have the same diet as a black bear. So, you know, I'm sure there's people seen them fishing before, and when they feel like eating meat, they're going to kill what they need to eat like any other animal. You know what I mean? And then they get fish when they need it or want it. And, you know, that's all I can say because it's Mother Nature. You know, mountain lions chasing down a fawn or Saw a great thing on Fox News the other day of a black bear chasing a moose cub. I think it was at Yellowstone. Somebody filmed it. Well, that's just nature, and that's the way it is. Animals got to eat, and that's what they eat. And, it's like us. We might eat pasta, and all of a sudden one night we look at each other and go, hell, I want a steak. So we're going to have a steak, you know what I mean?
People ask this all the time, and I've never asked you until now. But
right.
Do you feel that humans may fall into that category of prey, and perhaps have they been before? You felt threatened one time. Did you feel threatened like you were, a meal in an hour or so?
No, I never felt that, and I talked a lot about that with Doc. And I mean, the reality of the Bigfoot enigma, it's become a cult phenomenon. And just like a lot of other legends and folklore in American history and other cultures, there's been some embellishment and there's been some mystery wrapped around them and some hearsay and this and that. But from what I've experienced in 3 years, I've never felt really dangerous. I mean, once, like when the tree knocking occurred and I realized that she was behind me that close, I just kind of sat there and thought, okay, if this is I'm this close, it's your big chance to do something to me. And she didn't. And another thing I'm very leery of, on the couple of times that I've been near George, I actually started moving away to get back behind my car because I was afraid he might throw something at me, because they are known to throw stuff at people like rocks and logs or, whatever debris. They're known to do that. So I've taken safeguards for that, but I've never felt like my life was in danger. And the feeling I'm getting with George out there right now, after 2 years of being around him, is that I think he's getting comfortable with me and he's getting to know me. And my ultimate goal is to eventually get face to face with him at night or some night and interact with him at an amicable level, and bond with him, and then document it, to give the world the irrefutable proof, that they need up close and personal. And I talked to Doc about that. And it, when you think about, the famous Miss Jane Goodall, look what she did with her research decades ago, and the forte and the approach that she took to get to bond with and interact with and actually live with those lowland gorillas. Everybody knows the Jane Goodall story. So that's my ultimate goal, and that's what I'm hoping for. And that's the way, with the way things are going and the way I'm doing things, I think there's a good, strong possibility that might happen in the immediate future.
Okay, so Dan Toth, you've said that you've heard tree knocks.
Oh, yeah.
And other people have said, well, I've had Bigfoot, Sasquatch throw things at me. You mentioned that, rocks, logs, things like that. Have you ever had them throw something at you as if to indicate, get out?
No, I've never had that happen. That's what I'm saying with even the incident at Bobcat Pass in October of 23, the way that thing screamed that night, which I still regret not being able to get on audio, because, that ATN model I had now, and ATN thermal imagers, I got the high-end model now. I went and invested in it, but I wish I would have recorded the audio, but I've never felt threatened or in danger like the Bobcat Pass incident. I think it was a case of he was telling me to get the hell out of here, and I didn't. And I actually believe, personally, from what I sense and perceive, in my background as a SEAL, I think that it was kind of maybe standing there that night thinking, wow, this thing's not afraid of me, or it didn't leave, or it's not running. If that makes sense, because I guess you could say I stood my ground with the elk herd, and he just stood there watching me. And that was another incident in case where the incident was taking, it was being prolonged to such an extent with us kind of doing a stare down standoff across the field. I just quit filming. And then it was crazy because as soon as I quit filming, not even 5 minutes or not even a minute. It was a minute or so. Yeah, I looked back up and he was gone. He was gone. As soon as I quit filming for like a minute, not even a minute, I looked back up again and he was gone. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I've never felt dangerously threatened, like my life was in danger by, the close-ups I've had with him, over the last 3 years, actually.
So he might have been taking the measure of you.
Exactly. I mean, it's like the Net Bobcat Pass. I went there right before Christmas, another month later, and I was sitting there thinking maybe I'll get lucky, like in that scene from Close Encounters when they went to the viewpoint the next night, hoping they'd see the UFOs again. I did that, and I had a damn mountain lion come up on me in the dark. Caught him or her. I couldn't tell what sex it was, but he was coming across the field, and I caught him on my thermal. And I yelled at him. And I got to admit, I pulled my revolver out that night.
Yeah.
He got pretty close, and it was kind of funny because I yelled at him. I said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" And he stopped, and he sat down. I'm serious. And I just sat there and looked at him. And I won't repeat what I said to him as a SEAL, but I told him I was going to pluck his whiskers and put him in a certain place. I did. I said, "Hey, man, get your ass out of here. You're going to lose your whiskers. I'm going to put them where the sun don't shine."
Well, I used to go rail fanning up. I lived in the Sierra Nevadas, about 4,000 feet for 28 years. While I was there, I would go out rail fanning, hiking by myself. I was well armed. Ruger Alaskan in 454.
Wow.
And there were times when people who have encountered mountain lions have said, you get this really funny feeling.
Yep.
And there have been numerous times hiking by myself. Yeah, I'm armed. I got photography equipment, video equipment, used to make all sorts of videos about trains, rail fanning, etc. And I just got the really weird goosebumpy kind of feeling.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. They're one of maybe the only animal out there I know of where I feel a little, can't really trust him or feel him out or get a good bead on what he's going to do or he's thinking or doing. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I actually exercise a little bit of caution when I've run into 4 or 5 of them over the years out here when I was hiking and stuff. So,
okay, slide.
Okay, this is the great one. This is from August of 24, out by Summit Creek, Colorado. On the picture, I hope you can see it well, but on the right, or excuse me, the left with the circle, that's George. And if you look at the trunk of that aspen tree coming up from the middle and the top of the aspen leaves there. So there's a big trunk on the right, big trunk on the left, and then the little one's coming up the middle. And I'll landmark you as best as I can with this. But at the bottom where the vegetation is and the leaves from the aspen tree on the right side at the bottom of the trunk, middle trunk, if you look at the trunk, it stops and you can see where George's right side of his face is overlapping the trunk. And if you go up on the left side of the trunk from the aspen trees a little bit, you'll see a black glob that's overlapping the middle trunk, and that's George's hand with his fingers curled in and his wrist where he's holding on to the tree. And the middle painting is from eyewitness accounts of multiple Sierra, Mountain, California, Washington, Oregon, Canada sites of what Sasquatch really looks like from multiple, that's an oil painting. And then if you come to the right frame, I zoomed in as best as I could. And if you look across the top of the vegetation of the aspen leaves, and you look at the trunk of the tree at where it comes up out of the aspen leaves, if you look there real close, you'll see where George's right side of his face is overlapping the tree. And if you look real close, you can see the white area, and you can see his nose and eyes and mouth, and then his pointed skull, and then his shoulder and his big, huge trapezius muscle that goes down there to the left. And if you look at the painting, and if you can see that, because like I said, I took that really quick with my phone because it happened so fast. The painting of the eyewitness accounts and the artist rendition, George, there right there at Summit Creek 2 years ago at that was 1 o'clock in the morning. You can see him stand there, and I hope everybody can see that. But if you go to my website, you can look at it better and see it in more detail. But that's the closest I've been to George, and that's him standing there looking at me, and that's his face and his hand up around the tree.
Okay. Now, until I place this on the screen larger than when I received it in my phone,
yeah,
I have to tell you that a lot of the photos that I've seen to now have been fairly obscure.
Right.
And I don't know how clear this is coming across to everybody. Maybe you'd have to play the show
Yeah.
later on, to
Right.
see this, or maybe even to go to Bigfoot Investigative Group, the website. Maybe it's there. But of all the photographs that I have seen here tonight, and most of the ones that I've seen from you recently, to me, there's something I'm seeing what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And maybe people are saying, oh, there's just, it's funny stuff. And it's patterns of light and dark. I'm looking at this thing right now. I see, and I seldom admit this, I see what you're saying.
Yep.
I see that right there.
Yep.
So I don't know. I wish the show were of sufficient technology that I could embiggen this and show it to you. Look, that's what I'm seeing right there. Don't you guys see that right now? I see it here on this monitor right here, right?
Well,
now.
you can see his eyes and his cheeks and the white area where his mouth and no hair is, and then you can see his beard, and there's a twig going over his mouth. A little twig sticking out there to the.
I wish I could somehow enhance this.
Yeah.
To the point where it would be really clear for everyone, but I can't. But I like this photo. I think this shows this is a great display. Let's go to the next one.
I can do that on the next show. I'll doctor it up and clean it up and see if we can clean. Yeah, we'll go to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is ending. This
is weird.
Huh? This is crazy.
This is really weird. I didn't expect this.
Well, I wanted to end on this note tonight, and I want to make everybody 100% clear that I'm not correlating Bigfoot, UFOs, or UAPs in any form or fashion. But I was coming back down from Sand Mountain 2 years ago in May up at Clark, and you can see it was a cloudy, overcast day. Out there in the distance, you can see the Zirkle Mountains. And I actually heard this, like, shh, that's the only way I can describe it, like a light, like, I don't know, something hissing through the sky. And I looked up and I just started taking pictures with my phone because I heard it. And I thought, what the hell was that? And I thought, man, if that's a dragonfly or something, it's a big one. And I was even looking around for a huge flying insect. But when I got home, unloaded my camera and looked at this picture that I took, that's a disc. That's a flying disc. And it's disfigured right now or discolored around its edges because of white, some type of distortion. But I caught that disc going over Clark, and it was moving so fast you couldn't see it with the naked eye. And if I blew it up over here to the left, and you can see the really weird contrail that it's leaving from its movement through the sky. And then even with the enlargement in the left in the box and the frame, you can see the outline of the object. And you can tell that's not a bird, that's not a helicopter, that's not a plane. That thing is moving. And I just happened to catch it because I heard it. And I thought I'd show that to everybody tonight. But that's in May 2 years ago up in Clark at about, I think that was 12:30, 12:45 in the afternoon when that one went down. But I caught it, and there it is. You can see it with your own two eyes. So that's a freaking head scratcher big time there. You know what I mean?
The other reason that I like to go into your CV, and especially for people who've not heard you or seen you before, is your past experiences lend a great deal of veracity to what you're saying now. And the reason, beginning of the show, I said, "Hey, tell us a little bit about your background." And with that, in my estimation, that lends credence to your observations. So, how far away was? Well, let me put this back up on the screen. How far away do you think that was from where you were standing?
That was probably maybe a half, not even maybe between a quarter and a half a mile, maybe, if that. Yeah, maybe quarter, half a mile. So that gives you an idea of the size of it. And then I want to candidly let everybody know, because I personally don't believe that there's a correlation between UFOs, but in the last 3 years, of being out there at night, I've seen multiple orbs. I've filmed on my thermal imager orbs orbiting over my head up in Wyoming at night at midnight, literally not even 30 feet over my head in the car or where I'm sitting going around me. And it's crazy because you can't see them with the naked eye, but you can see them through a thermal imager. And I'm not lying. I picked one incident that took place near Clark, right there where I was at that spot sitting at night 2 years ago. I've got a couple of videos of an orb approaching me in the dark on my website you can look at. And I talk to it and it disappears and then it shows up again. And then I yelled at it and I said, "Hey, why don't you," I'm serious, don't think I'm nuts, but I said, "Hey, I'm not afraid of you. Why don't you talk to me? I mean, people around here where I come from, we like for you to say hi." And I did. I said that. And
be friendly.
Well, I'm not joking with people. I'm telling you the truth. I've got it documented. You can look at the video on my website. The thing jiggled like this, and then it took off. And I yelled at it and said, "Hey, where are you going? Come back here. I'm serious." And it fluctuated in the sky during its movement. And you can clearly see it's an orb. And it goes into this cloud and disappears. And it's the only one that I decided to post because I got to the point where I've been seeing them so much when I'm out there and they're around me. And I'm serious, they're around me. And I've gotten to the point where I just go, okay, you're not going to fry my brain. You haven't sucked me up with a cow and a pink beam of light. So, they're there and I know they're there. And I really don't pay any attention to them anymore. But I've got a lot of film footage of them on my thermal where, they're doing stuff in the dark. And at night where I filmed them, where I'm thinking, God, what the hell are these things? Excuse my French, but they're there and I see them all the time. And if you go to my website and you go to the big pictures page and scroll down through all the videos, you can see them on the orb encounter at Clark 2 years ago. And there's a part 1 and there's a part 2. And part 1 is where I'm talking to it and then it disappears. When I start talking to it, it just goes like this and it just disappears. And then I put my thermal down for about 10, 15 seconds, I think it was. And sure enough, I looked up again and there it was again. And it was coming closer to me in the dark. And it even moved in the video because across the road in the meadow or in the field, across the road from where I was parked and sitting, it actually went over top of a buck, a mule deer buck that was across the road. And it put itself right above the buck and the buck stopped. And then I yelled at it and then that's when it took off. So that's all on video. You can look at it. It's crazy.
Let me go back to this photo just for a second. Yeah. Okay, see the ridge that's beyond the furthest house that's out there?
Yeah.
That ridge before the mountains, way before the mountains, is that ridge about the distance, or in other words, that object, was it roughly above that ridge?
No, it was like the house in the foreground here. It was probably, you see the house in the background below the ridge you're talking about?
Right.
I would guess, because I didn't see it. I just got lucky and caught it because of the speed. But I would say it was between the house in the background there at the bottom of the ridge or the hill and the house here in the foreground. I think it was right between them.
Okay.
Moving right between them. That would be my guess.
But the naked eye, nothing. You didn't see a thing. Only later.
Well, I heard it. Like I said, I heard this like really weird sound, and I just thought tick, tick, tick. And I've done that before with George and caught him. Like, the picture we just looked at, I just started taking pictures thinking he's got to be there. And then I realized he was, but sometimes you get lucky. There's another thing. I was a highly trained photo intel guy in the teams, and I went into places, took a lot of pictures of stuff back in the day during my enlistment or my career from 74 to 99. And, they taught you this technique to take pictures and set the f-stop and the aperture at different settings so you get different amounts of light coming through on that 800 ASA film we used back then. But when you did that, you bracketed, we called it. Right. And what you would do is one of those settings would get you a really good picture of that object in the dark, based on the aperture and the f-stop and the films, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, then you go back and develop it in the dark room. And you look at your stuff and you go, oh, there's the one that came out the best, you know what I mean? Okay. And even back in them days, you used to have that cable that you put in there, you screwed it in, the old Nikons, and you push it down, hold it open, and you'd count, like 10 seconds, go to the next one, 20, 30. So one of those would be your ideal amount of light for that night or, photo in the dark where it would come out good and you could get clarity, for good intel of what you were, photographing. Yeah.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was a stringer for a newspaper, and I took lots of photographs, and I used to shoot wedding photography, all 35 millimeter stuff, all Nikon stuff. And I used to develop my own black and white. For whatever reason, when you mentioned that, what came back to me was 1/125th at f11 ASA 100. That's how you shoot the moon.
Yep.
God, exactly. Why did that come back? That is so weird. Okay, here's another photo. What is this, Dan Toth?
I just made that for the fun of it because Doc told me, he said, make sure you got a good filter and keep a sense of humor with this stuff.
Yeah.
So that was me and Mike on our first outing 3 years ago out by Rollinsville. And we were actually spent the day just to test our gear, before we started working in the field at night. And so I AI'd or put that PNG overlay in there as a joke, with Bigfoot walking behind us while we're standing there posing. So I thought it was funny, and I just did it as a joke. And for all you cat lovers out there, I made this one too. I love this picture. I think it's hilarious because
the cat is shocked. I tell you.
Yeah, he's taking a selfie of himself and Sasquatch there, but I made a joke on my website out of this where I told cat owners, I said, if you own a cat and you love cats, this is probably what your cat is doing during the day while you're at work.
That's right. They're nefarious.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the Reader's Digest version for the big expedition so far this year in May and June. And I haven't been back up there yet. My car's getting fixed, but I'm going back up next Wednesday. And, what do you call it? Keep the faith and keep plugging forward. So,
well, when you come back with some more take, let me know, and we'd love to have you on and show whatever it is that you happen to capture, photos, video, whatever it happens to be. Let me also remind everybody of this. If you want to find out more about Dan, if you want to find out more about the Bigfoot Investigative Group, a ton of information here on this site. Lots of videos, lots of photos, lots of maps, great stuff to look at, all sorts of fun. Go to BigfootInvestigativegroup.com, BigfootInvestigativegroup.com. And so, Dan, thank you so kindly for being here.
It's great as always.
Denied 403 forbidden. And keep on keeping on, sir. Thank you.
And good night to everybody. Thanks for having me. And another thing, real quick, if you guys got any events or speaking engagements that you'd like me to appear at, feel free to contact me. My email address is on the contact link of the website, dan@bigfootinvestigativegroup.com. I don't charge an arm and a leg for nothing. And I'm going to be appearing at the Butte Paranormal Conference September 26th as their keynote special guest speaker. And that'll be a video feed like this this year. But if you have a speaking event or whatever you want me to appear at, feel free to contact me, and I'd love to do it. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It was really great sharing with you. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you got people out there doing Bigfoot stuff, keep up the good work, because, it's a big country. And they're out there, and we're all in this together. And, thanks for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. And have a good week. God bless America, whether they like it or not.
Oh, boy, that's an issue for another day. Dan Toth, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks to everybody for being here tonight. If you have a group or a convention or some kind of a meeting, contact Dan. He's the guy. He's all sorts of entertaining, has great stories, great experience. You can't go wrong when you go with Dan. And that's going to be the end of the show. I have to say this. Thank you, everyone. Whether you were watching live, listening live, or you're doing it later in podcast, thank you very much for watching Access Denied 403 Forbidden tonight on the SHR Media YouTube channel, on X and Rumble. Crossed fingers that Rumble was actually rumbling tonight, because I didn't have a lot of luck with technology today. But I want to tell you this in passing. On this show, we will always explore the anomalous, the unhinged, the fringe, the cringe, the UFOs, the cryptids, the abhorred, the ignored, the restored, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the curious, the quantum, the lore, the lies, the legends, the chimera, the unquantifiable, the untaxonomicable, the forbidden, the locked government dossiers, the prohibited archives, the unbidden, the dark, the echoing caverns, the abnormal, the paranormal, the unsound, the subterfuge, the cabals, the conspiracies. More shows on that coming, kids. And all the wet, slimy things that refuse to fit in your closet, that leak from your dresser, or breathe under your bed at night. Once more, our thanks at SHR, and from me, BZ, to Dan Toth of the Bigfoot Investigative Group. Also, I'd like to end it this way. If you have your own applicable experiences, shall we say, and you'd like to talk about it on the show, send an email to bz@shrmedia.com. bz@shrmedia.com. I'd enjoy hearing from you. And if it's good enough, if it's credible enough, or if it's frightening enough, we may need to chat. So thanks for watching live. Thanks for watching later in podcast. As I'm always suggesting, keep your eyes and ears open. Folks, good night.